There we go. Awesome. Hi, everyone, and welcome. It is Birdability Week 2025, and we are on day 3. And I am so grateful that you all are here and joining us. My name is Kat Fribley. I'm the executive director here at Birdability, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a fat, white, middle-aged, multiply disabled queer femme with purple and brown hair that's up in 2 buns right now. I'm wearing some chunky hot pink glasses, some really dangly pink flower earrings, and multiple layers of pink on top in terms of my clothes. There are green plants behind me and a red wall. And I'm in my home office in Iowa City, Iowa, which is both the current and the ancestral land of the Meskwaki people. In order to create virtual access for as many folks as possible, we have ASL interpretation and captions for this evening. To generate captions, please go to the bottom of the screen and select the box that says CC in the toolbar. You can then choose Show Subtitles there. For us to build a community based in disability justice, we will pause if there's any breakdown of accessibility through interpretation or captions. We will also be using audio descriptions for any visuals that are shared as well as for ourselves, as you heard when I just introduced myself. We welcome you to have your camera on. We love seeing your faces. Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Jay. Always a delight. We also welcome you to keep your camera off and to care for yourself in whatever ways make sense, and to join us in the ways that make sense for you. Due to the number of us who are participating, we do ask that you remain muted. And if you have a question, feel free to send it in the chat, or you can also raise your hand using the Zoom features. We will use the chat to ask folks questions occasionally or have you ask us questions, but we are also mindful that that can be disruptive for folks who use screen readers. So we'll do our best to make sure that we're repeating out loud sort of the flavor of the chat whenever we can, but we've also enabled the option in Zoom settings for you to choose to have the screen reader skip chat comments if you are using a screen reader and you would like to do that. We encourage you to let us know if there's something that we can do to make this more accessible for you. Tonight or moving forward, we're all learning every day about how to best create access and inclusion for our community, and we love that learning together. So I'm really grateful that you all are here and that you are a part of this growing birdability community that's working to introduce folks to birding, especially folks with disabilities and other access challenges, and to make birding accessible and inclusive for literally everybody. Birdability is a national nonprofit that was founded by Virginia Rose, who is here with us tonight. We became a nonprofit in 2021 and have been working to share the joys of birding ever since. And I am just delighted to be able to have Birdability Week in its 5th year this year. It is a week-long celebration that is filled with virtual events designed to connect birders of all abilities, as well as an opportunity to share resources and ideas to help the birding community become accessible, inclusive, and welcoming. It draws inspiration and it builds on other inclusive celebrations like Black Birders Week, Latino Conservation Week, and Let's Go Birding Together. We have a super birdie week planned, you may have noticed. We invite you to join us for so many different ways to be in community around birds. Every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, we're doing an Instagram live virtual field trip to a different part of the country. So far, we've had Tama Watts, Brianna Hawkins, and and Emily Nichols, who each have led us on a pretty fantastic field trip in the area that they live in. This morning, and Emily's on, I'm just going to tell you all, in Arizona, they got rain and we got a rainbow on our virtual live and a gorgeous red-tailed hawk up in the
Oh,
tree. So if you get a chance, please join us for one of those and start your day with birds and birdability community. It's been a deep joy. Tomorrow, we're going to have Maria Elena Montero from the DC Bird Alliance taking us on a field trip in DC. And then on Friday, we have Birdability Captains Extraordinaire, Gary Harritz and Kara Burkow, who are going to help us identify and enjoy backyard birds in North Carolina. So and over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we'll be taking you with us to Birdability Your Way weekend events, accessible events that are happening across the country. Right now, every night I get to say a higher number, which is really pretty great. So right now we're sitting at 110 virtual events around the country that are happening. That is a spectacular testament to this community, the folks who are on this call and who have done the work of introducing folks to the idea of accessible bird outings and asked and found ways to ask others to join them. So we can't do this without your support. There's lots of ways that you can donate. Taylor is going to drop into the chat some information, including a link for how you can donate on our website, how you can donate via PayPal giving. We also literally take old-fashioned checks. We love them. I'm still a check writer, and I welcome your checks. If you think that this work is meaningful, if it has had an impact on your life, we would really appreciate it if you would consider a donation to allow us to continue it, because individual donors are vital to building this movement. I also need to say none of this could happen without our Birdability captains. Our Birdability captains are the core of this organization. We have worked together not only in front of the camera all week, but also behind the camera for weeks and months leading up to it. Birdability captains have worked to make this week happen every step of the way, and I can't thank them enough. I want to also thank our Golden Eagle sponsor, the National Audubon Society, and our Belted Kingfisher sponsor, the Utah State University Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice, which is one of a network of federally designated university centers for excellence in developmental disability, both of whom have made really National Audubon and USUDRPP have made it possible for this week to happen and for us to have ASL interpretation. Thank you to Pro Bono ASL for providing interpreters for this event, and thank you to the interpreters who are here with us tonight. Our board is made up of fantastic and engaged advocates, and we are lucky to get to work with them. We're grateful to have them in leadership in this growing organization, and we're also grateful that they have some tech skills to help us out with. So thanks for being here and doing that tonight. All right, no more announcements. Let's get to the questions and the panelists and the joy of birding and belonging. And I have to tell you all, so I had just put an Instagram post up about reminding people that tonight was this birding and belonging panel. And then Eric sent me pictures from an event that he and Virginia held on the 18th as part of Birdability Week and as a part of the Roots and Wings Festival there in Austin, Texas. And I immediately took down the graphic that I had designed and put up one of those pictures because it sings with joy and belonging and with community. And so I'm so delighted to be joined tonight by our founder, Virginia Rose, by Anne Marie Geiger, and by Eric Clow. And I'm going to ask each of you all to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your role and time with Birdability. And Virginia, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right.
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, thank you, Kat, for being the extraordinaire ED that you are. Thank you all birdability captains, one and all. Anne Marie is one of the very first, too, by the way. So thank you, Anne Marie. And Eric is my sort of right-hand man in Austin, thank goodness. So I'm happy to be sharing the screen with you guys. I am very excited about Birdability Week numero cinco. That's
Mhm.
Spanish. And very excited to be looking at all of the wonderful things that Birdability is doing now. Let me step back for a second and say that my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am um, an older woman with gray hair, and I have on spectacles, and I have on what is this called? A headphone
Headset.
and a microphone. And I've started Birdability, I guess it was about 8 years ago,
Mhm.
um, in just trying to create a birdathon for a person in a wheelchair. I was the only one in Travis Audubon, and so I thought, I'm tired of running around with all these walking people. I'm ready to have my own darn birdathon. And from
Yeah.
that came Birdability. So that's all for me.
Yay. Thank you. We'll hear lots more, I know, about the whole process too later tonight. And do you want to go ahead, Anne Marie, and share
Sure,
with us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Birdability and
sure.
when?
I am Anne Marie. My pronouns are she, her. I am an older woman too, with fake non-gray hair, and I'm a little person, but a plump little person who maneuvers with a power wheelchair, which I've had for about 6 years now, and before that was a manual wheelchair. I got into birding. I was born with a rare, very rare bone condition. And so as a infant and child, I was often stuck indoors with a broken bone. And I started my love of birds when my parents got me a bird feeder so that I would have something to do when I was stuck in the house. So anyway, that started my obsession and it went on from there. Let's see, I got involved with birdability pretty early on, like Virginia said, that I think it was 2020. It was in the middle of COVID and got involved there that way. So it's a
Wonderful.
great organization and I'm happy to be part of it. I
Yeah.
wish I could do more. I just seem to never be able to get as involved as I would like to be. But it is definitely a great place to be.
And you are is exactly as involved as is right for you, and that's what we want. And I'm super excited because this weekend, Anne Marie, you'll be also helping lead a birdability event. I just want to point out in Dixon Meadows, in Pennsylvania. Always a really cool place to go and bird. If you are in that area, definitely check it out.
It is a
Uh,
nice place.
yeah.
You scared me for a minute. I was thinking, what am I? And
What am I doing?
when when you said Dixon, I'm like, oh yeah, this weekend.
Yes, exactly. Eric, how about you? Would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So my name's Eric. I use he, him pronouns. I am a 38-year-old white man with quite the hippie look going on right now. I've got long, just past the shoulder length, light brown hair. Wearing a sage green headband. I've got a thick beard with lots of gray hairs about the chin. And I'm wearing an olive green shirt, which it might look like I have really broad and strong shoulders, but that's actually a heat pad in my shirt. So I have muscular dystrophy. I'm not broad shouldered in any way. And I also use a big power wheelchair, which you can't really see at this time because I've got a blurred background. I'm in my garage right now. So I first, the first time I actually met Virginia, I was realizing this as y'all were saying that this is the fifth annual. I actually met Virginia for the first time at Birdability Week 1. And it was kind of fortuitous that the previous Saturday I did a bird walk with Travis Audubon Society here in Austin, Texas, where I live. And I talked to somebody there. They were like, "How do you know Virginia? You should reach out to Virginia." And so she connected me to Virginia, this Travis Audubon volunteer. And I said, "Hey, Virginia, what's going on?" Like introduce myself. And she was like, "Come to Lake Creek Trail this Saturday." And that was the first Birdability Week. So that's in 2021. And then I became a captain a few years after that. So it's been a real great joy in my life to be a part of this organization.
I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm going to have you go ahead and start us on this question. We're going to go backwards now, and I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit, Eric, because you're referring to a point where Virginia was like, "Hey, come bird," right? Like, come and do this
Mhm.
thing. What does accessible birding look like for you in practice?
So, as I mentioned, I have a power wheelchair that I use to get around. I have Becker muscular dystrophy, which is a progressive neuromuscular disease. It causes um, greater muscle weakness over time. And so a lot of times birding for me looks like this very fine balance of doing enough, doing as much as I want to, but not doing too much, and to try to maximize the mental health benefits and the joy of the experience without wrecking my body. And so some of the ways that I do that is I try to bird for shorter amounts of time, maybe just an hour or two, often in my backyard. It means that and I'm very lucky to have this incredible technology in this wheelchair that I have that has what's like a I describe it as a self-driving mode, right? So I, find myself on a straight path and I push the joystick forward and it runs for about a minute and a half. And I can just kind of relax. Sometimes I'll tilt way back looking up at the sky if I know that there's nobody in front of me. And, sometimes it means that near collisions happen. Like it was like the very first time out birding with this new wheelchair feature, I almost ran Virginia down and was just like maybe a half an inch before the collision happened that she got out of the way. So that's one part of what it looks like. It also looks a lot different, I think, than your average or your kind of 30 years ago, if you thought about birding, you would have thought about it as middle-aged to older white men, able-bodied, walking and, using binoculars. I cannot use binoculars at all. So my version of birding is completely with my naked eyes and mostly with my ears. And other aspects of it, involve taking lots of breaks, stopping maybe earlier than your average birder would. Sometimes I might have a caregiver drive me. Sometimes I'll need to tilt back, and it's not because I'm sleepy. It's because I just need to rest my body or change my position, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I love that. And Eric, I so many times, well, first of all, I want to just uplift that Eric is also an incredible writer. You should definitely check him out at Real Bird City News. I know you have a podcast as well, This Absurdity, that I've gotten to be a guest on and that I've loved listening to. And I just want to say, when you talk about that balance of doing enough without wrecking your body, you might have heard me reference that last night on the session. I reference it all the time because that's been one of the things that you have taught me is to be able to say, this is not joyful if I wreck my body doing it. And so I'm just so appreciative of you naming that ability to define for yourself what balance means. Um, so yeah, I love that. Anne Marie, does any of that resonate for you? What are the things that make birding accessible for you in particular?
Ideally, it's accessible parking, accessible trails, accessible everything. But in
Mhm.
reality, that doesn't happen. It can be even as simple as Eric mentioned, watching birds from my house, looking out the window.
Mhm.
So it can mean many things, but birding does definitely hold a special place for me because it is a relaxing hobby and it just takes me away from any anxieties that I might be going through or depression. It just kind of forces me to refocus,
Mhm.
whatever might be bothering me, or even if it's a short period of time. it helps. And I always come out of the fog, you know, to
Yep.
some extent. So it definitely, that's what birding means for me. And of course, unbelievable beauty should be mentioned too.
Mhm.
It definitely, when you look at each bird and really look at it, the beauty is just overwhelming. Even that brown colored sparrow, you know, it doesn't matter. It can be that or a painted bunting. It's all good.
I really appreciate the ways that you have been willing to participate in so many conversations about birding and mental health with me too. Anne Marie, this is a place we often connect, whether it is on a webinar or a panel or whether it's your writings. And thank you for sharing what makes birding accessible to you and like what you value in it. Virginia, I'm curious, tell us a little bit about now what accessible birding looks like for you in practice.
Right. And you and I were on the same brainwave just then because I myself was thinking about what accessible birding looked like for me
Mhm,
25 years ago. So
mhm,
just for those of you, I'm a paraplegic. I use a manual wheelchair, and I was injured in a horseback riding accident 52 years ago. So what that means is overused shoulders.
mhm,
And so to Kat's point, what I could do 22 years ago, the trails I considered accessible 22 years ago, I can't do anymore. So this has been a great sort of equalizer, I guess
mhm,
they call it, for me to have had to learn what I cannot do anymore. And that's been a real difficult thing. But I will begin by saying what is accessible for me now is going to be a parking space
mhm,
that's a van space because I have a van now. And I used to, have a little car and I didn't require a van. And so my requirements are different now.
mhm,
And so now I need a van space. I am still able to kind of jumping ahead, so I'll stop you. One of the questions was about barriers.
mhm.
So I'm gonna just return. What is an accessible place for me is a van space,
Yep.
a curb cut,
Mhm,
a restroom that has a door that I can actually open by
mhm.
myself,
Yep.
and one that I can close by myself. It's one,
Mhm.
this is my dream bathroom. A mirror. I would love to be able to see myself
Yeah.
in the mirror. I would love to be able to reach the toilet paper from the toilet.
Right?
I would love to be able to reach the soap dispenser because 9 times out of 10, it's out of my reach. So these are the littlest things. And the last thing is, I love a low hook
Mm,
on the inside stall door so I can put my jacket or I can put my binoculars or something. So all of those are the kind
absolutely.
of the silly little things that make it all
Yeah.
accessible. But to me, that really helps. I can't do crushed granite in the same way that I used to, Kat.
Yep.
I'm having to lean more and more towards sidewalks
Yep.
and even asphalt, but it's got to be well maintained asphalt.
Yes.
And I start to feel like I'm a little bit fussy about, about what I need in order to
No.
experience an accessible um, trip. But, I am learning too that if I recognize a way in which it can be improved, I can speak up to
Yes.
that, and people are interested in making change. For instance,
Absolutely.
20 years ago, a railing, I could I could more easily look under the railing
Mhm.
or above the railing, but now my view is, I think, at 36 inches. And so if I can't see at that view, if that
Yeah.
view line's obscured, then I really can't see on that boardwalk or on that bridge or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
these are all the things that make a place accessible for me.
And I'm super grateful that you uplift this piece that what is accessible to you has changed over time. And fingers crossed, we all continue to get to age. We do that with our disabilities. That means our disabilities are going to change over time along with our aging bodies. And so, all of that together means that what was accessible for you 25 years ago, or frankly, even 10 years ago, is probably very different than what you need now to give those shoulders a break, to not do that transfer right in and out of a car with your wheelchair. And that being able to ask for and have those accommodations that you need is not fussy, my friend. It is exactly why we're here, because
Right.
that those are the sorts of things that are natural changes that are happening, and so wonderful when we can identify them.
Right.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I add one more
please.
thing that I think was such a critical
Yeah.
lesson for me, Kat? I was so sad about the things that I was losing
Mm,
physically. I was very sad. And it took me a very long time to accept that my shoulders weren't what they
mm,
were. And it took me a very long time to accept a smart drive on the back of my
mhm,
wheelchair. It
mhm.
took me a very long time to accept the van. But you
Yep.
know what finally helped me do it?
No.
My friends and family telling me that this was freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
This meant freedom. It wasn't a limit.
Yep.
It was freeing me to continue doing it. And it was,
Yeah.
why did it take me so long to understand that?
Well, so I'm go to our next question, but I'm going to say I'm guessing partly it's internalized ableism because all of us live so strongly with that. I know for myself, Virginia, just recently I got my first mobility aid, electric mobility aid, and up until that moment, I fought against it. It was my family and friends too who were like, "We want you on the trail with us, and you can't do it. Please, let's make this happen." And once I did, it felt like freedom. It felt
Yeah.
like something very different for my body.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Eric, if you could share a moment with me where a trail or an event or a resource made birding possible or more joyful for you.
Sure. So I had the privilege of going on a couple of trips over the summer. One of them was to Chicago area.
Mhm.
My grandmother was turning 100 years old, and so we went up there for her birthday celebration. And there was, of course, I had to bird when I was there. There was, it was only a matter of figuring out where to go. And I emailed Lake County Audubon, which is a county near Chicago, and they very kindly responded with over email with several places to try out. And I kind of fleshed out a little bit more. I was like, I'm going to be mainly birding by ear. I want to be in the woods where I might hear some warblers singing. And because in Texas there's so many songbirds that we see that are just passing through, and we don't hear them
Mhm.
vocalize. And this was going to be an opportunity to hear them vocalize on their breeding ground. And so I went to a place they, recommended a place to go check out, which was um, it was Ryerson Conservation Area.
Oh, yes.
Have you been there?
Ryerson Woods.
Or oh
Mhm.
yeah, so Ryerson Woods, it's
Mhm.
in River Woods, right along the Des Plaines River. And
Mhm.
so they have, I mean, it must have been like a quarter mile loop, not really that long of a loop, but it was on, the sidewalk was flat, wide, smooth, and it just kind of, meandered through the woods a bit. And there's woods up there like we don't have here in Central Texas. We're limited by water here. And so, but out there, it's like you feel like you're in a national park just going down the street,
Mhm.
right? Like neighborhoods feel like national parks because you got these huge 100-foot trees all around. And one thing I was going to say about that is I think people who kind of know about birding peripherally that are not maybe birders themselves, I think sometimes that they might not totally um, appreciate the benefits beyond just presence, mindfulness, getting into meditative state, this idea that like, oh, we're going to go out and bird to like to get our to rest our minds so that we can go back and be more productive, right? And that's not really how I approach birding. Birding is so much deeper and profound than that. When I went to Illinois, I was entering in an area that was going to be emotionally difficult for me because I hadn't gone up there for almost 20 years since my grandfather had passed away, and there were kind of splits and divides in the family after his passing. And the day before I went birding, I visited my grandmother and kind of rolled out to the backyard after talking to her, and I broke down completely. I was just kind of overwhelmed with the emotion, and um, and there's history there in my family where disability is kind of, it's treated differently, and but anyway, after that, getting to go out and bird in these woods, and I felt like I could connect to the spirit of my grandfather. I know that he appreciated nature, and I was wandering around thinking, this is like what he, lived and loved. Like there were 4 species of woodpecker out there. There's red-headed woodpecker, northern flicker, red-bellied and downy. I got to hear birds sing that I never heard sing before. Baltimore orioles, rose-breasted grosbeaks, song sparrows, and had this absolutely amazing experience. And the day before we left, I knew I needed a little bit more, just a little bit more of that. And so I went out there, and because I didn't want to bother my wife and my caregiver with another bird outing, I said, just drop me off, I'll be fine. And this happened to be a day when there was nobody there at this place. The visitor center was open, but it was all open and available. And I went through and I got to spend 3 hours by myself out in nature. And this is something that is so rare for people with significant disabilities who rely on caregiving. This experience of being alone and the solitude of being in nature. And it was so profound. And then there was a thunderstorm, and I had to huddle underneath the overhang at the visitor center. And when the rain started easing, an American kestrel flew out of this building from across the way where it was nesting up inside this building. And and again, and not only was I by myself, like away from family and friends, but I was the only person there. And I just have to say that that experience was created because people were receptive when I emailed them and just communicated with me. And it was very little that they had to do to connect me to this profound experience. And 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 the other thing is that belonging is not always a thing that happens when humans are around. There were no humans there, but all along the trail, I can feel the tremendous care and love and sense of inclusion, like that went into this place. This place now is, you know, is filled and alive with this sense of inclusion. And I just really, yeah, that was a really profound experience for me. Thanks for letting me go on and on
Oh
about
my
that.
gosh. Thank you for sharing it. I think you raised so many really important points. And the one I want to just remind people is that that Virginia, you I know say all the time that it's not accessible if we can't do it alone sometimes, right? Like that there is this piece, especially with caregiving, that there is a joy to the solitude that is so different. And I'm so grateful that you had that opportunity. Anne Marie, I'm curious for you if there is a moment where an accessible trail or an event or a resource made birding possible or joyful in a different way.
In my beginning years, I just birded from my house or my backyard.
Yeah.
And because everything else was just not possible. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way. So I just remember I must have been in my 20s when I went to Cape May. And I could not believe it. They had a trail, a boardwalk trail with a lip around the edge for a person in a wheelchair. And I just couldn't believe it. And then there was a hawk watch platform that you could go up with a ramp and I could be up high and view the impoundments below with all kinds of waterfowl and look up and see hawks migrating through. And I was just in awe. I could not believe that it was real. It just made me realize that, hey, it is possible. So it was really an eye-opener for me. And I've been back there dozens of times. I love it.
Yeah. Even in this space, it sounds like, Eric, that you were talking about, it makes me think about there were some sort of infrastructure pieces that people invested in to make it accessible enough to have those
Yeah.
moments of awe, whether it was for you, Eric, or for you, Anne Marie. And I want to name that too, that those infrastructure investments are so valuable because that allows us to find those places, right? Virginia,
Right.
what about you? Do you have one you want to add?
Um, mine is a little bit smaller, I think, than Eric's and Anne Marie's, but the first thing that came to mind was let's see, 2 years ago at Featherfest in Galveston, there was a little, gosh, I can't even remember the name of the site, but it was a beautiful little boardwalk. It was on the east side of the island, and we went down there, but they had big boards all along the railing, and I couldn't see out, so I didn't spend very much time there. But Julianne and I decided we were going to do something about that board, and so I said, can't we just pull it off? Can we just get a hammer and just pull it off? Because that's my MO. That's usually how I go about things. It's like,
Making it
um,
happen, making it
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
forgiveness over permission always. But this time Julianne said, no, I'm going to talk to somebody. And so she did. And then the very next time I went down there, they had removed the board, totally removed it. And I was just ecstatic to
Mm,
be able to be on that boardwalk and to actually see all the birds. And I could
mm,
spend a couple of hours instead of 5 minutes,
right?
just because I could see, Cat.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think goes to that barriers piece, right? The barriers was one of my next questions, and I want to touch on the fact each of you have named barriers already, barriers that are made by other humans, barriers that come from our bodies, barriers that we live with in terms of birding. I'm really curious um, if there is a particular barrier. I'm going to sort of merge a couple questions because I'm recognizing we're never going to make it through even one third of what I was hoping to, of course, which is exactly as it should be. But I'm really curious about, as you think about those barriers, is there a change like that you think in your head, like, if we could just wave a magic wand? I asked this of another group too. If we could just wave a magic wand and this barrier would disappear, what would it be? What is the thing that would make you immediately be like, I've got my answer. Get your magic wand, Cat. It's time to go.
I would say the trail service surfing
Yes.
is really paramount because, like, asphalt is great, boardwalk is usually great, hard packed stones can be great. Loosely packed large stones are a nightmare. Usually mulch is a nightmare. So that's usually the first thing. And then, of course, there are the side panels that Virginia was mentioning that can
Mm,
make it or break it because you can be in the most beautiful place in the world, and if you can't see,
right.
what's the point,
Yep. You got
So,
it right in front of you.
yeah, right. It's all right there. And worse, if you can hear it and maybe see parts of it, there's a lot more in front of you, but you can't see it. That gets the frustration really,
Yeah.
Yeah, but remember, Anne-Marie, that's when you just put your wheelchair in elevator mode
Yeah.
and you left me at the bottom and you just went straight on up and you were looking at all kinds of stuff. And I was like,
This is really
hey, what are you doing up there?
fortunate that I'm one of the ones that have a chair that will rise. It's about 8 inches, but that 8 inches can be enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this is
Yeah,
such
that
an
was funny.
important.
I do remember that day. I felt guilty.
Yeah, not too guilty. You stayed up there a while.
I I think it's such a good reminder too to folks who are joining us who may not be as familiar with wheelchairs too. When we say birding from a wheelchair, that can mean so many things, right? Each of you has an incredibly different set of technologies in your wheelchair that allow you to do different things because it's what you need. And so I just want to name that piece too, that Virginia, you're talking about, using a manual wheelchair and wearing out your shoulders until you got that smart drive, which hopefully gives you a little relief. But for Eric and Anne Marie, you all are using power wheelchairs now,
Right.
right?
Right. I wasn't until about 6 years ago.
Yeah,
There's more accessibility for me in some ways today with the power wheelchair.
interesting. Eric or Virginia, do you have an answer about what you'd like the magic wand to be able to remove barrier wise? Eric, I see you unmuted. Eric, go.
Oh yeah, well, I totally agree with what Anne Marie said. Yeah, trail surface is absolutely really important. The biggest, oh my gosh, the biggest frustration of my birding career is hotel beds.
Oh.
And because I try to go to festivals and I like to travel to the Texas coast and
Mhm,
that sort of thing. And unfortunately, Airbnbs are not really that accessible, and
mhm.
camping is not really that accessible. And so I often have to end up going to a motel. And hotels industry wide are moving towards these solid, impenetrable frames underneath the bed that prevent anything from going underneath. And I use a patient lift to get in and out of bed that has legs kind of that extend underneath the bed like a forklift.
Yep.
And, I might try calling 20 different places, and only one place, will have the kind of bed that I need. And so I'll end up going on a sofa bed or on a rollaway. But man, if there was, I would absolutely request your magic wand to fix that problem, to just have regular four-post beds in at least the accessible rooms.
Yes, yes. So noted. And magic wand handed to you for that, or used for you. I'll just go along the US making that happen. Virginia, how about you?
Oh gosh, it would be I would be hard pressed to just identify one thing. I definitely have to ditto Emery and Eric with respect to surface.
Yeah.
Um, and railings is my big thing, and I would love
Mm,
it if bird blinds, if I could go up to a bird
yes.
blind and use the wand to make sure that the door is either gone or one that I can actually open and one that I can actually get around and get into. And
Mhm,
then once I'm in the blind, that there's actually a place that I could sit in front of and look out, that
mhm.
the lowest part of the viewing window is low enough for me to actually see out.
Yes. Yes.
And then, I guess finally with the wand, I would make sure that the photographers in the blind
Mm,
knew that there were a bunch of other people in there who were looking to see birds
yes.
too.
Yes.
So
Sometimes what we need the magic wand for has nothing to do with our disability.
that's
I
that's
acknowledge
right.
that.
I have a very quick success story related to that, Virginia, that
Yeah.
I went out with a bird guide. I think it was Dallas, Texas area. I don't remember exactly, and I don't remember the name of the place. So, but he took me along this trail. It was a little rough going, and then we got to a bird blind, and I could hear all this stuff going on. These shorebirds screaming and yelling. There were black-necked stilts and all kinds of other birds. And he brought me into the bird blind, and we looked out the holes. I tried to look out the holes, and of course I couldn't because they were all too high. And
Right.
this guy he was as devastated as me. And to make a long story short, he he put in to people that it mattered after I left. And like maybe 2 years later, he wrote me an email that they had rectified the situation and made lower peoples or slots. I don't know what they did. So,
Excellent.
so if you speak to the right people and the right people can speak to the right people, you can get action. Not always. Money is often the issue, but we got to at least try.
Yeah.
Totally true.
I want to link that back to something that actually Lindsay, who's on our call, Lindsay Rowe, mentioned on our BC3 panel, which is this piece around when people have an emotional connection to the change that needs to happen, they often are able to make the change happen. And what you were describing is that emotional connection of this person being devastated to see you couldn't access this thing, right? That you deserve to be able to access. And so I think that's part of what Virginia has built here at Birdability is this insistence that uh, advocacy combined with that sort of emotional connection is such an important piece of how we change the world and of how we change birding, certainly. I want to ask you, I'm going to, sort of move us just for a minute because I'm recognizing we're already coming to the end of our time together. Uh, and I'm curious if you all could share with me what you think would be most useful to communicate to birding organizations about the belonging piece of it, right? About that component, less the infrastructure, but rather what would make programming and events feel like belonging to you? Virginia, you have an answer for us?
Um, I've been leading bird walks for a long time,
Mhm.
and I also was in the classroom for a long time. And I think one of the most important ways to build belonging in a classroom or on a bird walk is if you create an environment where your students and or your participants are relying on each other
Mm,
in that time. So for instance, when you're in the classroom, you don't want to be the one answering all the questions as the teacher. So you want to direct your students to work together to notice the things that
mhm,
lead them to the
mhm,
answer. And the same exact thing is true on a birding trail. So as a birding instructor or a birding leader, the students or the participants are asking me, Miss Rose, what is that? What is that? What is that?
yep.
And I'll say, I'm not the answer monkey. We got to talk about what we noticed first. And, some of them are going to be impatient with that. But the better way to build belonging on that trail in that hour is for people to be noticing things together.
Mm,
And when they are, someone you don't even know will say,
mhm,
wait, wasn't there some white on that tail? And then the person right next to him who he doesn't know says, yeah, you're right, I saw that. And so then you're building community
yeah.
as people are identifying the bird together.
Mhm. I love it. I love it. It also speaks to the piece around redefining what birding is. You don't have to be this expert who has all the answers. As a matter of fact, right? It should be a group activity when there's a group. Eric, I see you unmuted, please.
Oh, I have so many things to say about this, but I'll try to keep it short. One thing that I wanted to echo was something that I think that I heard you say, Kat, either in one of the last workshops or on Facebook, this idea about expecting people with disabilities are going to show up to your walk, which feels it's more than just we're gonna have this accessible thing, we're gonna have this inclusive thing, we're gonna dot our i's and cross our t's to make sure that we have a fully ADA accessible bird walk. But this idea that you're going to expect disabled people to come to your event, And I also want to say that to create a sense of belonging, you don't have to do that much. You know, when I came to that park in Illinois, all the thing already existed, and all they needed to do was just write me a simple email and, give me the information, and they created this incredible experience. I also wanted to shout out to Ken Bales and Albert Schultz at Santa Fe Audubon, who, when I went to Santa Fe in August, when I emailed them, "Hey, do you know of any accessible, birding places?" Immediately, or within a day, I got a Word document with 12 possible places, and he provided information on the surface and the parking of each one, just totally unbeknownst. I mean, okay, maybe he didn't cover everything, but like that was so much. And then he also offered to meet me, and he met me, and we went birding together, and
That's awesome.
at a place that the Randall Davey Audubon Center in Santa Fe, which is not terribly accessible, but it has a parking lot that's accessible. And I got out of the parking lot and immediately got 4 lifers within about 2 minutes. And to contrast that, I was at a place called Thousand Palms Oasis Preserve in Coachella Valley. And when I got there was a volunteer docent who immediately told me, "Hey, this is not accessible. This is not for wheelchairs here. We don't have. It's not accessible. Sorry, this is not a good place for wheelchairs." And this was the first thing out of her mouth,
Wow. Yeah.
And I was thinking, when I went to this place, I'd been told by my mother-in-law that it's a beautiful place to just sit and listen to the wind go through the dried palm fronds. And I could have just rolled up and had that incredible experience if all she had said was, "Hey, hey, sir, like, welcome to this, to the
Yeah.
Oasis, and unfortunately, we're not that wheelchair accessible,
Right.
and I'd be worried for you to get stuck, but if you're hanging out in this area, you can just kind of sit and take in the sights and the sounds." And it would have been so simple to just change out those 20 or so words with 20 different words, and I could have had this, really incredible experience. And the last thing I was going to say, which is I think is so important, is in a lot of birding organizations, we're starting to provide different walks for different groups. Like at Travis Audubon, we have a women's walk, a BIPOC walk, a
Mhm.
birdability walk. We have an LGBTQ walk, and I think that that's important to give people that space and where I can feel represented and where I can feel safe. But I think ultimately down the road, the goal is to expect that people from all these different groups are going to come to every walk, and that's really my
Absolutely.
dream. So thank you.
Absolutely. Having both things that are targeted and centering, right? And then over and above that, making every opportunity available to everyone and everybody. Yeah, I really hear that. And I want to say, Eric, one of the things you just said validates a thing that I've heard multiple times from folks, which is if you can just start with the question, uh, let me know how I can best support your birding experience today. And that literally is what we posted about invisible disabilities, but it is certainly true about visible disabilities too. Starting just from that place makes such a huge difference. Anne Marie, is there anything in particular that you would like to share about what you wish birding organizations would know or invest in for belonging? And
The one thing that hasn't been mentioned is I've seen modifications made that were not really successful as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's because often they have folks on the committee doing it that do not have a disability. There was a recent modification made to a little marsh area near me, and I wish the heck I had been on the committee because well, first they built a platform for a non-disabled people, and it involved steps, and so that you could see above the reeds, and that makes sense. But then I went there and saw everybody climbing up on that and was pretty upset. So I made a phone call or two, and I heard that others did also. Make a long story short, it took a couple of years. but they did finally build a raised area so that you
Mhm.
could see over the weeds. It's not perfect. It's not as high enough as I would envision, but it certainly made a difference. And, you know, I think
Yeah.
it's important for people that are working on something like that to consult with those that have a true disability.
I I just want to, sign, cosign, lift up exactly that, that when you are starting to think about accessibility, that you should have people with disabilities as a part of that conversation from your community. This is not something that is an easy fix where you can just say like, oh, I read these things and now we're going to do this. That's super important. And we're so grateful, right? That people are investing in that learning. But realistically, one of the most important things is reaching out to Anne Marie or Virginia or Eric or the other folks in your community with disabilities for that kind of uh, knowledge and experience to inform what's happening, right? I'm so appreciative of you naming that, Anne Marie. And I want to acknowledge that we are at almost the top of the hour. And what we're going to do is we're going to close. I am going to ask you, Virginia and Anne Marie and Eric, for one word answers to a question about what you hope for the future of birding and birdability. And then we're going to end our recording and we're going to do some prize drawings. So, is there a question or a word, sorry, that comes to mind immediately for any of you about that question of what you hope for the world of birding in the future?
I would just have to say inclusion
Yes.
is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. It's not always easy. And mind you, inclusion, we are all different people. We may have a different disability, we may have different needs and abilities, and, you know, so it's not a perfect
Mhm.
thing that can be done all around. So,
Yeah,
but definitely inclusion is important.
thank you for that. Virginia or Eric, any last word?
I would just say it's inclusion, but kids,
Oh.
specifically kids.
Mm. Gosh, now we need another hour to be able to dig into
Yeah.
more of what, like that's one of the things that happens all the time. But I want to come back to that conversation, and we will. I think in future webinars. Eric, how about
I,
you?
I would say community and the power to change the world, which I
Mm,
think birding has, and love, of
mm,
course.
Doing it all with love, hugely important. I want to thank you all. Please stick around, everyone. I'm going to stop our recording right now. I can't thank you enough for being here tonight.